How's it going, dudes? That's right, boys, it's time for everybody's favorite event that takes place every 4 years, the United States presidential election. We've got two beloved, well-liked, we've got two candidates up for the title of president of these great states, and while we don't know who will win, we can all rest easy knowing that no matter the outcome, a major metropolitan area will suffer. But I've been hearing some whispers that some people don't like either candidate, and they don't know what to do in order to get someone into office that will take America to the next level. So what should these purely hypothetical people do? Stop whining and do it themselves, and I'm gonna learn you how. This is Road to the White House, the 1992 board game that teaches you how to run a campaign guaranteed to get you into the most powerful oval on Earth. I fished this bad boy out of a resale games area with the intention to put it through the ringer in order to answer one very important question. Will this game help you win an election? Let's start building your rock-solid platform by first looking at what you do in the game. Road to the White House challenges players to use all the resources at their disposal to campaign around the United States in an attempt to win their party's nomination for a shot at the presidential election. There are multiple different ways that you can play this game. There's an easy mode that removes some of the mechanics, there's the standard way of playing where after the party's nominations the votes are tallied for the winner, there's some advanced rules that, trust me, we'll get into, but what we are going to focus on here is the full campaign, where not only you will need to beat out other players for your party's nomination, but then turn around and beat the other nominee in another campaign to win the presidency. We're covering this mode as it not only uses all of the game's mechanics, but also because it is extremely complicated. So you're going to have an absolute blast watching me struggle to explain all this crap to you. To start us off, the rules already don't work. From what I've read, it does not mention anywhere that you need to select which party nomination you are running for from the start, which causes an issue because once you get past this round, it's Republicans versus Democrats, along with any third-party runners. So it wouldn't make much sense for everyone to be going against each other only to split up into teams after. So for realism's sake and to make the game run smoother, we'll be playing like this. Players will divide into Democrats and Republicans and compete against their other party members to try to secure that nomination. Once each party has their nominee, the presidential candidates will compete to try to secure as many electoral votes as they can, while being assisted by the other members of their party. Whoever can amass at least 270 electoral votes wins the presidency. In order to start the game, each player is going to need to select which candidate they would like to play as from the wide selection of stereotypical political figures on offer. Then grab your pawn, your surrogates, and let's get political. Now, you currently either have a slight idea of how the game operates or are hopelessly lost. In either case, let's remove some of that fog from your vision by jumping into those mechanics so you know what you'll need to be familiar with in your future campaign. Nothing is perfect in the world, so if you're going to be able to put a good campaign together, you'll need to figure out how you're going to approach issues. Issues are the topics that the voter base cares about and want to know your stance on, and can rise to the top of the public conscience either intentionally or through events out of your control. Each issue carries their own effects and will impact each candidate differently based on their positions on those issues. For example, if foreign relations becomes an issue, then pro-foreign aid candidates will get various bonuses in states like Washington and Kansas, while anti-foreign aid candidates will get bonuses in states like Idaho and Indiana. Another classic Hoosier W. If you've seen the coup video, you know that trash is pretty much useless. Issues only last a certain number of turns until people get tired of hearing about them, and can be put into play in two ways. Candidates can raise a new issue of their choice or revive an old issue that was previously played by paying money at the start of any week, and can do so until the limit is reached. This will help you learn how to strategically bring up issues that will help your campaign, like walking up in front of a crowd and saying, "Hey, do you know what stinks? Getting old." But the other way issues come up is much more reflective on how issues really emerge. Completely at random. When an event card is drawn, there is a chance that it could be an issue card, which will cause a new issue to take the forefront or allow a player to choose a new issue to add, forcing candidates to prove that they are able to navigate unpredictable challenges. Just be sure to avoid bouncing back and forth on what you support. You don't want to end up like We have Governor Matt Pollock with us here today. Matt, some voters are a little confused on your environmental policy, as you've previously called yourself a hero to the plants of this great green land. But last week during an interview, you said, and I quote, I just love oil so much, I can't stand being without it. My sweet, sweet oil, it drives me, it motivates me, doesn't matter what kind, but crude is my favorite. I love it right out of the barrel. I've been hospitalized for drinking oil, and we looked that up, that is in fact true. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I once squeezed oil right out of the bones of a dinosaur, and we looked that up, and that is somehow also true. Yeah. So I think I speak for many concerned environmentalist when I ask, what is your concrete stance on the environment and why should we trust you with the nomination? Yeah, that's a great question, Billy. I have tons of legislature related to the environment that I am ready to fight for as soon as I get into office. Related how and in what way? Well, I can't divulge too much now. You'll know more about it once I'm elected into office. Alright, super. But no one is going to care about your stances on hot-button issues if your campaign looks like it's held together with chicken feathers and hot tar. As no good campaign can rise without the right amount of money. To quote the game, money is the mother's milk of a political campaign. We couldn't find a single other comparison? And that strange visual is backed up as you are going to need to constantly feed your campaign if you want to keep it from withering away. Your total amount of money is tracked in these mega dollars and is kept safe and secret in your war chest. Since I haven't outright said it, all of the information on your score sheet is kept secret from the other players. So your opponents won't know how much money you have, your state multipliers, your issue bonuses, or the amount of votes that you have in each state. Although there are ways to find out this information. Each candidate starts with a different amount of money based on their background, but a campaign is expensive, so this well will quickly run dry if you are unable to secure other sources of funding. There are a couple different ways that you can get your money up. One way being to randomly draw into some through an event card, like how here the NRA will back you to the tune of $20 megadollars, a frankly absurd amount of money, if you get the highest total of your pro-guns rating plus a die roll. Issues could also inspire others to back your candidate. If trade becomes an active issue, then the best tariff-supporting candidate will get an endorsement from the United Steelworkers worth $10 megadollars. A pretty steel penny. But a more reliable way to get your bans is to go out and get some the old-fashioned way with a good old fundraiser. Fundraisers can only be held in a size 4 or higher city, each city on the map being ranked based on their size and importance. So yes, you can fundraise in Kansas City, Missouri, but not Kansas City, Kansas. To twist the knife a little, you can't do it in their capital either. So right now, Kansas is looking about as useful as a salad bar in a Walmart. Either you or one of your surrogates can hold a fundraiser in a city, but will be unable to move or collect votes this turn if you do so. But what good is having all this money around if you can't spend it to influence the election? So let's hit him with a weather dominator and make it rain! Most ways to spend money revolve around the other mechanics, like how you could spend money to raise an issue. But there are 3 specialty ways to spend your money that have their own effects on the game. The first and most obvious one, spending money on advertising. Governor Matt Pollock is a warped, violent man looking to corrupt the very ground beneath your feet. I am ready to fight the environment. What? Congressman Trey Hugger is a different soul, a kind leader looking to clean up the government, crack down on drugs, and improve our schools. Matt Pollock, he hates the environment, and he hates you. I'm Trey Hugger, and I approve this message. You can spend up to $5 megadollars on your turn to buy media advertising in any state, even if you aren't there, which is a good way to buy votes in states that aren't important enough to waste your time visiting. If you think I'm being a little blunt with the buying votes description, the game literally states each megadollar buys 2 votes, so eat dirt. Another way you can spend your mega dollar bills is by conducting polls. Since the amount of votes a candidate currently has is kept secret, you might want to find out that information to learn if you should focus on trying to steal a state from them or look elsewhere. But what's the point of even jumping into the political scene if you can't use that fundraising money for illegal activities? That's the most fun part! At any point in the game, you have a number of dirty tricks at your disposal that you can spend money on to gain an advantage. The cost varies for each, and you'll need to record on your score sheet every time you use one. So what are some of the totally legit campaign maneuvers that you can pull off in this title? You could, hypothetically of course, prevent a candidate or surrogate from being able to move or hold fundraisers for a term, which could end up trapping them in a place like Austin, Texas, a fate worse than death. You could force a re-roll on any one die, either yours or an opponent's. And if you have enough cash, there is no limit to the amount of times that you can do this on one roll. You could force any player that just drew an event card to completely disregard that event card and draw a brand new one. Again, as many times as you want, as long as you've got the cash. And your last option is to just silence any active issue immediately, removing it from the active issues section like, people of these United States, poverty is a massive issue right now. We need to... New reports coming in, nobody cares anymore. Again, you can pull off these dirty tricks as many times as you want, but while in the real world being corrupt has never resulted in any negative repercussions whatsoever, in order to balance the game out, they have implemented a countermeasure for this play. See, when corruption becomes an issue for the very first time, the ensuing scandal will make you lose votes for every dirty trick you have played so far, which is why you keep track of them. For every state you aren't currently in, you just lose votes equal to your dirty trick total. But for that state that your candidate is in when this story goes live, you lose votes equal to your dirty trick total squared. So if you are campaigning in Arizona and you have done 8 dirty tricks, you aren't campaigning in Arizona anymore. So now you've put together your stances on issues and got some shekels in your pocket. But how are you going to get around to telling everyone how great you are? After all, you can't be everywhere at once. Well, if you can't spread your own propaganda, have someone else do it for you. Surrogates are people that help your candidate get the good word out by campaigning alongside you. These are all people that are either close to the candidate or have some weight behind their words, like the candidate's wife, leaders of organizations backing the candidate, or famous people whose words have weight despite having about as much knowledge on the current state of affairs as a grilled cheese sandwich. No, you just don't get it. Famous actor Jack Guy has been hit just as hard by the rising cost of goods around the nation. He was only able to buy one yacht this year. Surrogates are really helpful, as while you are away chipping at a massive swing state, your surrogate can help reinforce your lead in other places around the country, or vice versa. Each candidate can start with either 1 to 2 surrogates, but these are only active for a certain number of turns before people get sick of hearing from them. So you're going to need to be able to acquire new surrogates from events, issues, or by straight up buying them. Welcome back. Our next guest is famous pop sensation Jackson Starlight, who has made headlines after switching his endorsement for the Democratic presidential nominee from Congressman Trey Hugger to former Denver Broncos quarterback Boomer Littlefeet. Mr. Starlight, what was the turning point that made you change your mind on who you will be voting for? Yeah, so originally I was all for Trey. He spoke nice and I always liked seeing him get up on stage. But after Boomer paid me a frankly absurd amount of money, I realized that I just have way more in common with him. And how much money did Boomer end up giving you in total? Oh, I'm not allowed to say. He said that if I ever tell anyone how much money he gave me, he'd be dragged out into the street and beaten with metal piping. And he's right. After he gave me the check, I almost went out and did it myself. Fascinating. You can only have up to 3 surrogates at one time. Any more than that and people will start to wonder what blackmail you have on the army of celebrities just following you around. But being able to give some of the work to your helpers will take a massive load off your back and allow you to maximize your image spread while keeping you at the top of your game. But after you get done delivering a rousing speech that has left the crowd in awe, what's to stop the populace from just moving on to the next guy after you leave? You need to establish some staying power in the places you went over. So make sure that the people never stop hearing about how great you are by establishing an organization there. A state organization represents the hundreds of active workers that a candidate might have in a state, earning more votes through their enthusiastic work for their leader. Organizations simply multiply the amount of votes a candidate will receive from operations in that state, like visits or advertising, and increase the multiplication the stronger the organization. Candidates can earn organizations in a couple of ways. Some will start the game with one or more, but everyone can earn one by visiting a state 5 times. You can also purchase an organization with mega dollars, and this is the only way that you can improve orgs to higher levels, the price varying based on the strength of the org that you want and the total electoral votes that state has. Organizations are a great way to make sure that you get the most value out of the actions in a state. But because of the high investment needed and the limited time that you have, you might want to secure just a few before focusing your effort elsewhere. But all of this information is practically useless if you are unable to actually get around the country to these places. So let's stop maneuvering through American politics and start maneuvering through just America. Candidates are able to move around from city to city via the regional air routes. What did you expect from these people? To drive? Like some kind of poor person? To move, roll 1 die for each of your pieces, then assign 1 to each. Unlike in other games, the pawns will not move the amount of spaces shown on the die. Instead, it will consult the chart and see which flight paths it is allowed to take this turn and choose where to go from there. So for instance, if you are in Lubbock, Texas and roll a 2, you can go to either Amarillo, Lawton, or Wichita Falls, but not Albuquerque. But if your luck on the die is a little worse than abysmal, you can get around that by using the universal problem solver, money! If you need to get somewhere fast, you can spend $1 mega to take a priority flight to any other city on the board, ignoring the die roll. However, if you want to do this, you'll need to declare that you are taking one before you roll. You can't just slap down 4 ones and try to backpedal your way out of that one, buddy. It's time to reap. Honestly, this is a pretty cool movement mechanic for how different it is. It really makes you have to chart your path out beforehand so you don't end up putting yourself in a spot that strands you for several turns until your private jet comes to rescue you. And we have breaking news in the race for the Democratic presidential nomination, as leading candidate Boomer Littlefeet has just amassed his 171st private flight during this election season. Across his multiple jets, Boomer has averaged approximately 1.4 flights per day, moving his team around the US, trying to get his message out to the people. But not everyone is hearing that message in a positive way, as noted woman Taylor Swift has reportedly voiced displeasure in having her record-setting single-year flight total upstaged. She was recently seen telling fans, "Do not vote for that Boomer guy, he has made me upset and gives me the ick." Since this development, Boomer Littlefeet's presidential hopes have quite literally died, as his popularity numbers have dropped into the negatives, something that modern scientists had previously considered statistically impossible. But now that you know all the steps to talk to the public, how do you tally the popular votes you've collected along your travels? Vote tallying is easy. When you stop in a city, you add votes equal to its score to that state's vote total on your scorecard. However, bonuses can be applied that augment your vote totals, so be sure to keep track of the following. Charisma bonuses. If your candidate has any charisma, they can get a Riz bonus if the role you give them is equal to or less than their stat. In this case, their card will tell you how many bonus votes they get that turn. Anytime bonuses. Some candidates will get bonus votes every time they move through a state because of how well they mesh with the people there. Be sure to not forget about these advantages, as I don't think your opponents will be lining up to remind you just in case. And active issue bonuses and organization bonuses, which we've already covered. All of these bonuses are cumulative, meaning that you can get a charisma, anytime, and issue bonus, and then multiply those by your organization bonus for a big boon. But enough clerical work. I know what you want to learn. How to outspit your opponent in the war of words and absolutely trash on them in some heated debates. Debates represent opportunities to prove that you are the superior candidate by gaining votes for you and causing your opposition to lose votes. When 2 pawns of opposing players are in the same city, whether they be candidates or surrogates, they can engage in a debate. You can also deny to debate the other person if you don't want to, but this will in turn make you look like a massive wuss, and you will automatically lose some votes in that state. If a debate is launched, those two will debate about the relevant issues to the public. So players will each roll 2 dice and then add any modifiers from their candidate cards to their rolls if active. For example, if national defense is an active issue, then Governor Matt Pollock's pro-defense policy will add +4 to his debate roll. And welcome back to the final debate before the Democratic presidential nominee is decided. We have our 2 leading candidates, Governor Matt Pollock and Congressman Trey Hugger here, talking about the public's most pressing issues. Gentlemen, you may resume the debate. Thank you, Barry.
Look, all I'm saying is that if you're trying to do something like that, you're going to end up going into a lot of issues because that's simply not how that's going to work.
Surrogates will also be able to engage in debates, but they will be unable to benefit from their candidates' bonuses. So they will be at a distinct disadvantage unless debating another surrogate. Organization bonuses won't help you win the debate, but they will multiply any votes that you get from a win. So if you can put together a decisive victory in one of these, it could result in a massive swing in a battleground state. But now you know how to do it all, and after a grueling 20 weeks, you are ready to see the fruits of your labor by seeing who managed to secure the nomination. Once the last week of June is completed, all of the candidates will head to their respective parties' convention in order to tally the public's votes. One player will read off each state one by one, and, taking creative liberties here to make the combined mode work right, the Democrat and Republican with the most popular votes in that state will circle those electoral votes to add to their total. If there is a tie in a state, then the tied players will hold a 1-die roll-off to determine who wins that state. No bonuses, no dirty tricks, just good old American gambling. States will be read off and divided until all 50 have been assigned, and the Republican and Democrat players that secure the most electoral votes in their party will each win their respective nominations to fight for the presidency in the general election. And we are coming to you live from the Democratic National Convention where the blue team's presidential nominee has just been named. And in a shocking turn of events, the Democrats have named Ann Sirius as their presidential nominee for this upcoming election. Ann had not been polling very well at pretty much any point during the primaries, but employed a never-before-seen tactic to snatch the nomination at the last second. Ann reportedly walked into a meeting of party heads and asked, "Hey, if nobody has the nomination yet, can I just take it?" With their response being, "Yeah, okay," securing her a spot in the presidential race quickly and cleanly. Ms. Sirius will be facing off against this year's Republican Party nominee, Donald Grump, in a matchup that has undecided voters saying, "Con-freaking-found it." And that concludes the nomination phase, also known as literally the first half of the game. Strap yourselves in, we're just getting started. Before we move on to the general election, you might have noticed that there wasn't already enough going on in this game at once, and you'd like it more if there was a lot more to keep track of. If this is you, I'd like to personally welcome you to our community of board game freaks. You can stop playing anytime you like, but you can never leave. To satiate this strange group, we have the nomination phase's advanced rule set, which adds federal grants, which I'm not even going to attempt to explain here, and more importantly, a much more accurate primary season, where states' primaries are held throughout the year similar to how they operate in real life, including your very own Super Tuesday. This is going to be a nightmare to maneuver through, as in addition to having to keep track of everything else that was previously mentioned, you will need to do so knowing that you have even less time to get to some states before they cast their votes and become unavailable. So you'll need to balance planning for the future and campaigning for the now all at once. Good luck with that! But since it will help better prepare you for the real thing, I had to include it. So after all of this nonsense has taken place, we are finally ready to start campaigning for the presidency in the general election. The general election can also be played as its own mode, but since we're prepping you for the real thing, we'll be playing it as a continuation of the nomination phase. Each player that secured their party's nomination will need to select their vice president, which could be one of the unused candidates, but for a much more fun experience could also be one of the other players from your party. Once the vice presidential candidates have been selected, the remaining players will need to decide whether to play as party members campaigning for their nominee, which will force them to play with only the rights of a surrogate, or try their hand at running a third-party campaign to attempt to win the presidency as an independent. Presidential and vice presidential candidates will share a new score sheet and transfer over any bonuses they previously had to the new one. The only difference being that anything that the now presidential candidate had before is now doubled. Vote totals, charisma bonuses, surrogate turns, organization multipliers, if there was any effect that you had before, it has now been doubled with no limits on how crazy that can make things. So well thought out campaigns could now be in possession of multiple ×6 organizations that are ready to start printing off votes. The last part of the setup phase is that nominees will automatically receive some votes from states based on standard voting patterns. For instance, the Democrats will start off with votes in places like Washington, D.C., New York, and Minnesota, while the Republicans will grab some early votes from states like Indiana, Kansas, and California. Yeah, welcome back to pre-90s election data, back when California was a red state. Haven't seen that in a while. But now that we are ready to start the campaigning, let's see what the game has to say about what's new in this round. The general election is similar to the nominating process, except for a number of rules changes. Awesome, the differences are in the changes inside there. I've gleaned so much. But while stupid, the statement is accurate. The general election plays exactly the same to the nomination phase, except for minor differences in how some of the effects work. So I'll run through those now. Surrogate turns are doubled when they start with a presidential candidate, so if the vice presidential candidate needs one, it's more optimal to have them start with the PC than transfer them over. Any bonus votes that a PC would get from charisma are doubled. All issue bonuses on the PC card are also doubled, even if they are automatic or negative. If an event card states that you have to gain or lose votes, that applies to both candidates on the ticket. Debates have more stipulations now, as while PCs get double their position ratings in debates, they cannot debate the opposing VP candidate, and vice versa. Surrogates or party members can debate anyone their little hearts desire, but if they square up against the big boys, they're likely going to get atomized. 3 issues can be active during the general election, and either PC can raise or revive up to 2 on their turn. The VPCs can still only do 1. And finally, they have completely removed the limit on the amount of money you can spend on advertising in one turn. Radio, TV, billboards, TikTok advertising, if you've got the dosh, a world of opportunity awaits you. The general election period lasts for 4 months before it is time for everyone to vote on who they like more. Move through each state determining who wins each one the same way as in the nomination phase. But if there is a tie, forgo the roll-off in favor of the 7-layer tiebreaker chart that gets frankly ridiculous by the end. Whichever candidate can reach the 270 electoral votes needed wins the election and becomes the new president of these United States. But Cam, what if there's a tie and neither candidate can get to the 270 votes needed? Well, you're screwed. The game doesn't actually come with any tie-breaking measures for this mode, probably because it's very unlikely that this will happen. But if this were to happen in real life, the House of Representatives would get to pick the winner. So based on 1992 House data, that would give the Democratic nominee the win there. So if you want to add that to your strategy guide, by all means go ahead. But if you didn't have the luxury of winning a nomination but still think you would make the best president, never fear. You can run a third-party campaign to take a shot at the top as an independent. Select your own vice presidential candidate and get out there to campaign with these debuffs for not having party support. An independent candidate can only choose one of these aspects to double. All other values stay the same. Unlike the other PCs, an independent can only raise one issue at a time, the same as in the nomination phase. Things are even worse for the independent VPC, as he is only able to use 2 of the 5 aspects of his candidate, needing to completely ignore the other 3 during gameplay. In addition to that, he is unable to raise any issues at all, practically reducing him to the role of a slightly more powerful surrogate than a candidate. The only way a third-party campaign is going to stand any chance is if you can rally the other players into backing you up, as there is simply too much of a gap in influence to try to take on the party solo. But hey, if you can manage to pull it off, that would be one for the history books. Now you know everything you need to know about how to utilize your candidate's strengths and weaknesses to take on the election cycle. But as you may have noticed, none of those candidates were in fact you. Sure, this game could help you practice if you are currently a congressman or former professional quarterback, but with how intricate the process is, I really need to have the guy I'm playing as be as close to me as possible to get good practice. Well, luckily for you, we can make that happen, as the game comes packaged with a fully in-depth character creation process that will allow you to build your own candidate from scratch. You thought this game was complicated before, you ain't seen nothing yet. So let's go through this Fatal-esque character creator and build our very own KamSandwich presidential candidate. We have 1,200 points to spend in the various categories, so let's start off by determining our Kam's charisma value. This will impact any charisma bonuses and how many surrogates you can start the game off with, so a value of 0 does put our boy Kam in a rough starting spot. But we can recover quickly, as it's now time for us to select our candidate's background. We have 9 possible backgrounds to choose from, so let's see what each one will get you. The sitting vice president background has a massive advantage in an election as long as the current president is doing a good job, and starts the game off with a myriad of bonuses. The SVP starts off with 6 votes in their home state and 3 votes everywhere else. Gets double votes from their Riz bonus, can introduce 2 issues for free, gets double the effect of gaining or losing votes from an event, and adds 2 to his dice roll when going for a free issue. To offset these bonuses, this background will cost you pretty much your entire point total, and will also cost you $2 every time you want to take a priority flight. Not $2 mega, 2 actual real-world American dollars. This is not me. The senator background will get you 10 votes and a strength 2 organization in your home state, 3 extra surrogate turns per Riz point, and doubles the dollar amount received from any special interest donation. This is not me. The governor background will get you 10 votes and a strength 3 org in your home state, as well as 3 votes and a strength 1 org in each neighboring state. This is not me. The congressman background will get you 6 votes and a strength 1 org in your home state and doubles the effect of all issue bonuses. This is not me. The general background gets you 4 votes in your home state, 4 votes in just New Hampshire, 1 extra surrogate turn per Riz point, and quadruples the effect of defense and foreign relation issue bonuses. This is not me. The sports hero background gets literally all the same bonuses as the general, but instead of the quadruple issue bonus, he starts the game off with 4 American dollars. This was almost me. The businessman background gets no votes from his home state, just 4 from New Hampshire, and gets double the money on contributions, quadruple the money from business contributions, and can buy dirty tricks at half price. This might be me later, we'll see. The populist background gets you 4 votes in your home state, 4 in New Hampshire, 2 extra surrogate turns per Riz point, and doubles the amount of additional surrogate turns during play. This is not me. Finally, the political unknown background gets no advantages whatsoever. This is literally me, oh my gosh. Alright, we're 2 categories down and I haven't spent a single point, so let's start getting around to helping me get set up. Surrogates. If you've got none because your charisma is too low, you can buy more to start the game at 25 points a pop. This is nice and all, but I'm more of a lone wolf type, so we'll be keeping that to 0 as well. Organizations. This will help establish a foothold in a state and can be bought with points depending on how many electoral votes are in that state. I tried setting one up in Indiana for some of that Hoosier hospitality, but when I told them the slogan was "Yes, we Kam," they all just got up and left, so nothing in that one either. Money! Yeah, right. And the last category is positions. Here you can spend points to establish your positions on certain issues to determine their bonuses. And after screwing up the rest of the categories, I'm gonna need to be really careful here to give my boy a shot. So I'm going to formulate the optimal platform to maximize my appeal to the nation. Perfect. And now we have our perfect Kam candidate. If you have any questions for our presidential hopeful, be that about his stances on certain issues or just general public interest, you can ask him below. He's going to need to get some practice in for when he finally reaches that minimum age requirement. Before we wrap this up, I'll of course need to go over some of the whack crap that this game has to offer, mainly seen in the issue cards. When corruption becomes an issue, you will gain bonuses in a number of states if you are a candidate in favor of clean government. However, Arizona is the only state on the map that will give you a negative effect for this. So I guess the Arizona faithful just love some corruption from their leaders. Kentucky is the only state in the union actively looking to exploit the environment for job growth. Candidates in favor of higher minimum wage will gain a bonus in some states, but will get a negative from just Arizona again. California is the only state in the union that actively opposes family preservation. Voters in Alaska absolutely despise the environment. New York is the only state that will give a bonus to both candidates that are for and against legalizing drugs. New Hampshire is the only state that actively despises you for helping old people. Delaware is the only state on the map that actively opposes just the general concept of civil rights. I must remind you that this game was made in 1992, so the fact that there is a Donald Grump card is completely absurd, as the only thing he'd be known for at that point was the art of the deal. And now the part that I've been looking forward to this entire time. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to Gary, Indiana, otherwise known as the urban equivalent of pouring water on a grease fire. 1 year after this game came out, Gary would earn the distinguished title of Murder Capital of the US, and has since garnered a reputation around the state of just being the absolute worst place you could go to. But the Gary, Indiana in the game tells a completely different story, as not only was it given the privilege to be one of the few cities in Indiana to be represented on the map, it was given a city rating of 4, making it just as important to the state as Fort Wayne. To showcase just how wild this is, here are several other cities around the US that have been classified as less than or just as important as Gary. Madison, Wisconsin, Des Moines, Iowa, Omaha, Nebraska, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Lexington, Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, Rochester, New York, Syracuse, New York, Albany, New York, Providence, Rhode Island, Camden, New Jersey, Richmond, Virginia, Charlotte, North Carolina, Knoxville, Tennessee, Savannah, Georgia, Orlando, Florida, Tallahassee, Florida, the entire state of Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, and most of Louisiana. Every single Springfield in the country. Kansas City, Kansas. Topeka, Kansas. Wichita, Kansas. Colorado Springs, Colorado. Salt Lake City, Utah. Every state that borders Montana, Spokane, Washington, Las Vegas, Nevada, and Sacramento, California. Gary, Indiana. It's a city on the move. So now that we know every intricacy of the game inside and out, it is time to answer the most important question facing the nation right now. Will this game help you win an election? Well, it'll certainly be better practice than doing nothing. If anything, this game could help you get acquainted with all of the different moving parts present while running a campaign. So it could act as a launching point for potential strategies. At the very least, it could help you better understand the process. Admit it, a bunch of you know more about the primaries in general now than you did going into this video, don't you? As for the game itself, this is the perfect example of a game that will be an absolute blast to play with the right crowd, and exactly no one else. For anyone not willing to put the time and effort into understanding the game, or anyone with a short attention span, this is going to be a slog to get through, and will quickly lose the player's interest as the turns go on. The requirements for this one are a little strict with who you can enjoy it with, but find that crowd and this game has a massive fun ceiling and a ton of replayability, especially if everyone makes their own custom candidates on later playthroughs. Well, that should just about do it for Road to the White House. I would would end this on a classic call to action, but this is legitimate wasted breath. If you want to do some political activity, go out and do something that will actually make an impact somewhere. Yeah, not making that mistake again. So just do your civic duties, and maybe a few years down the line, you'll be facing off against yours truly in a battle for the top office. Signing off for non-controversial policy, I am KamSandwich. Thank you for watching and have a fantastic day. A special thank you to my suppliers, staff, and chefs over at the deli. If you'd like to join the crew, you can take a look using the link in the description below.